You've been hearing a lot about it lately, present radio program included. Federal agencies are looking at different ways they can utilize recent breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. But just how much of their budgets are agency leaders willing to put towards it? That was a question our next guest tried to answer. Greg Dawson is a professor at Arizona State University who recently conducted a study with the Brookings Institution to look at how the federal government has been purchasing AI. Professor Dawson, thanks for taking the time to talk to us about this.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't we just start from the beginning and tell me what exactly you all were trying to find with this, was it a review or was it actually, research? What did you all undertake here?
Well, so this is our second paper in the series. We've been working with folks from Leadership Connect, and they, a couple years ago, provided us all of the information on AI spending within the federal government. And it had been 18 months, 2 years since that last study, and so we wanted to see what had changed.
Well, a lot has changed, right? So, well, in the technology world, at least.
Yeah. Well, we were surprised how much the spending changed as well. In the report we did 18 months, 2 years ago, Department of Defense was about, I think, 76% of federal AI spending, and they had about 250 contracts. This past set of data that we looked at, they are 95% of federal AI spending in the Department of Defense and now have over 650 contracts. Sort of our interpretation of that is Department of Defense has found some use cases for AI, and they are moving from the thinking about it as concept to this is how we're going to practically implement it. And we think that's exciting.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the big takeaways I took away from reviewing your research. Does the 95% number take into account that the Department of Defense, they do a lot of contracts anyway? Are they actually just purchasing the most AI in general, even taking into account how many contracts they do on a daily basis?
They are just purchasing the most AI in general. My colleague Jim Denford, who's a co-author on this paper, had the best line that if you look at federal AI spending, all other agencies other than Department of Defense are just rounding errors. The DoD is so prevalent in terms of where the spending is right.
Gotcha. All right. And were there any agencies that at least came a little bit close to at least, not being just a decimal point?
No, not really.
Wow.
I mean, the next couple of agencies were NASA and HHS, but they are just such in distant second and third place that they're almost irrelevant.
Gotcha. All right. And so how deep did you all dive into the kinds of AI technology? What did the numbers look like breaking down just the Department of Defense's purchases? Yeah,
so this is where it really got interesting because up till now, most of the spending has been on study-related stuff. So the NAIC code, I think, was code number 51, which is all about studies and things like that. The shift now has been dramatically towards Code 54, which is all about implementation work. So we've shifted from the study to the implementation. And as I said, clearly the Department of Defense has found some use cases for AI, and they're moving forward aggressively in doing it. And we can also see that with the with the different vendors. The vendors that we looked at a couple of years ago did a lot of study work. And now, as we predicted in our last study, so kudos to us for that, the integrators have moved in. So people like Accenture Federal Services, who are all about implementation, they are now, they're now a big player.
You use the prediction word. I'm going to hold you to that a little bit later. But first, let's reset here. Gregory Dawson is a professor at Arizona State University. We're discussing AI spending in the federal government. Looking through those vendors, is it a pretty good spread, or was it like a lot of the defense spending where there was the big five or anything like that? It seems as if there's a diverse group that the Defense Department is actually purchasing a sizable percentage from.
Yeah. And I'll go back to the P word, the prediction word. One of the things we noticed 18 months ago was, again, there was a whole bunch of small guys who curiously were often co-located with a military base. Now, and we thought the bigger guys would move in, and indeed the bigger guys have moved in. There's still a lot of spending on smaller companies as well, but the big guys have definitely moved in. And again, our speculation is that this has moved from, gee, what a quaint idea, to we've actually got some ways to be able to approach this, at least within the Department of Defense. when we talk about other agencies, I'm not sure the same statement can be made.
Yeah, either that or the big guys bought the little guys to move in, because that's usually the case.
Entirely possible.
I know that you said it's not even really sizable, but the agencies that are making those tiny purchases of AI, what are some of their use cases for it?
So it's not clear to us what their use cases are, and that's actually something that concerns us. One of the things that we've talked about in our numerous Brookings reports is the fact that the way the U.S. as a country is approaching AI is sort of, to quote Chairman Mao for a moment, to let 1,000 flowers bloom. So the U.S. as a country is looking very broadly and about AI and where AI spending could be contrasted to China, for example. And China is all about, they've got 2 or 3 things that they're pushing forward. Our speculation is that eventually the U.S. approach of, very diffuse spending is that it's impossible, or it becomes much more difficult to learn. There's a concept in education where the more you learn, the more you're capable of learning. Okay. The problem is if you're doing a whole lot of spending across a whole lot of different agencies, you don't have the opportunity to be able to learn those things. Department of Defense is, unquestionably doing it right in terms of going deep. These other agencies, I'm not sure that the learning is going to take place across agencies like we want to. And I know there's some federal regulations and boards set up to be able to address it. At this point, it seems like it's a lot more of a concept than actually being seen in practicality.
Yeah, and that provides me a perfect segue into my next question, which is, not every agency has one, but a lot of them have put out, artificial intelligence strategy. The White House has said some things about how they want agencies to using artificial intelligence. If you put those strategies side by side with your research and the strategies on another screen, does it seem like they're matching up and agencies are doing what they set out to do regarding AI?
Yes, but. So are they approaching it that way? Yes. But I got to tell you, a lot of those plans are very aspirational in nature. We want to be all things to all people and do good with it. I mean, that's good. But in terms of the practical implementation, that feels a little bit weak sauce to us.
Gotcha. All right. Well, so now I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. What are some of the predictions you think you'll all see? Or, are you planning on continuing this research? I imagine you are. It's fascinating, and I can tell that you're very interested in it. What are you all expecting to see the next go around?
So, yes, my colleagues and I certainly intend to continue our relationship with Leadership Connect, who's provided all of the data to us. So what we expect to see in the future is, I think the Department of Defense models perfectly what other agencies are going to do. So the Department of Defense sort of, nibbled around the edges for a couple of years looking at AI and has now found some use cases that it clearly views as worth exploring. We think that that's what the other agencies are doing now. They're just kind of dipping their big toe in the water to test their temperature. We have little doubt that they're going to be able to find some appropriate use cases, and that they'll probably be a couple of years behind where the Department of Defense is in terms of actually being able to implement these use cases. But again, I'm going to circle back to, this has got to be done in a coordinated fashion. If we're doing, one-offs across all the different agencies, we're not taking advantage of the wisdom that can be gained from a more coordinated effort. Again, what the White House has put out in terms of their strategy is quite good in terms of coordination. We would really like to see that stronger and enacted more fully. But mark my words, and let's have this conversation in a year or 18 months. I think we're going to see the shift to be fairly dramatic in terms of what other agencies have moved past the dipping the toe in the water, aspirational, to something where they're really no doubt implementing AI in the true sense of the word.
Yeah, we will definitely check back. I'll keep your email on file there so that we can weigh these predictions against what you all do find. Greg Dawson is a professor at Arizona State University. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll post this interview along with a link to Greg's research at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Listen to the Federal Drive on demand. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.